Gamarjoba, Rugorchar, Metzkarga. Welcome. Today we're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is Georgian wines. For those who don't know, wine was invented in Georgia according to all archaeological evidence. There have been sort of shifts in the timeline, but it is generally considered to be the birthplace of wine. And some of those ancient traditions and methods are still kept alive. It is one of the most wine-rich areas in the world, and they adore their wine. So Georgian wine is becoming more popular on a global stage, and I think that it is definitely worth looking into because it is something really, really incredible and very unique. That's a little bit of background. So today I'm going to help you guys choose a wine if you don't really have any context for what Georgian wine is. So how do you pick a bottle? So first we're going to talk about regions. There are 8 regions for wine growing in Georgia. For all intents and purposes, there are 3 major ones. So there's Kakheti in the far east. There is Sakartvelo, which is a little bit more west, and then they have Imereti, which is sort of central. There are outlying regions and areas that grow more niche wines, but today we're going to focus on just one of these regions, and that's Kakheti. So that is the far east, and that is basically the wine area in Georgia. As you sort of understand Georgian wine a bit better, you can explore into other areas. That's highly recommended. So that is the region. Next would be grape variety. So we're going to talk about just a singular grape variety here. We have 4 bottles, but just a singular grape. And that is Saperavi. So here you can see the label Saperavi. This is basically the king of Georgian wines and the champion Georgian grape. So all of these are derived from the same grape, the Saperavi grape, just in different styles and in different regions in Kakheti itself. In Georgia, there are about 500 grape varieties, and about 40 of them are in wine production, but just a tremendous amount of grapes. We've settled on a region, Kakheti, which I think everyone should start from. We've settled on a grape variety, which is Saperavi, which makes sort of the king of Georgian wines, the Saperavi here. And then you need to decide on which style you would like. Because a lot of modern wine in Georgia is produced using European methods, so it's macerated, aged, and then barreled. But if you go back in time, the original Georgian winemaking methods did not involve barrels. They involved sort of earthenware containers, sort of made of this material, and they were called Kvevri. So here you can see this is a souvenir Kvevri magnet. And it looks like this. So it is a giant earthenware container that is sunk into the ground, and the size of these can vary wildly. Some of them are just 10, 15 liters, and others of them are hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of liters of wine. There are reports of Russian soldiers when they came into Georgia falling into vats and drowning, so large enough to drown a human. And this is where that sort of connection to the ancient exists. And we have that here. So this is Kvevri-based wine. If you are taking a wine from the Georgian West, they are called churi. So there will be something called a churi, but that's basically the same. It's an earthenware container. So what they'll do is they sink this container into the earth at about to the lip of the container. So all of this is going to be underground. And this is actually how it's written in the Georgian alphabet. Kvevri. Kvevri. It's earthenware container, and they line the insides in beeswax, and then they fill the wine in, and they let it sit. And this can create a lot of really interesting colors. It provides a sort of amber hue to a lot of wines, depending on how long it's aged. And if you've been to Georgia, you'll understand that sort of the drinking culture around these wines is different than what we're going to do today. So we have stemmed glassware. We're doing it very slowly. We're looking for nuance and flavor. And the Georgians will typically drink really quickly. So they take wine as shots. So at a Georgian drinking event, everyone will get together. There will be a tamada who's like the toast master. He will make the toast, and then everyone will knock back their wine. So it's typically like a glass that's like this big, and then they'll just take it as a giant shot. But today we're just exploring the wine, not the drinking culture of Georgia. Hopefully that's a future video, and we can talk about supras and wine culture and sort of drinking horns and the earthenware drinking containers and things like that. Because there's a lot of really deep, rich history around drinking in Georgia, a sort of a cultural practice. But today we're just going to focus on the wine itself. So now we're going to crack these open. We've settled on a region, Kakheti, so in the east. We've settled on a grape variety, so Saperavi. We have settled on styles, so this is sort of the odd man out. This is the ancient wine method style. These bottles are about $6 a piece. These two are substantially more expensive. These are about $8.50. But this is sort of the mid-range price bracket. And I think that this winery is, for the money, the best that you can possibly have. So these are 4 different styles from the same winery. But if you don't have a winery that you trust or that you really expect good results from, you can take, let's say, 4 bottles of Saperavi from 4 different wineries and compare them. So that way you'll be able to find a winery that you really trust. But since I already know that this is very high quality, it's very affordable, this is what I'm going to go with. But I do also have a dark horse that I'm going to introduce into this as we open the bottles. Let's get into it. So here we have Saperavi. This is, as I mentioned, the king of Georgian wines. This is probably by volume the largest red wine produced in the country. So here we're just going to pour ourselves a glass just until we get to the thickest part of it. And we'll let this sit here just so that it can breathe a little bit. So this is the Kvevri made wine. So this should be the most unique offering for today. And every bottle that is made with this technique will say it. So it'll say Kvevri, or it'll have a picture of this. Or here's another sticker. So you'll see a sticker like this that just shows that earthenware container, so it's impossible to miss. The differential between sort of standard modern methodology and this Kvevri is not as visually apparent in a red because it doesn't, you don't see that amber color, but in a white wine, which I'll do a follow-up video to, it is extremely obvious. Okay, so we have our 2 Saperavis. So these are traditional Saperavi styles. This is EU methodology, so more European, so French and Italian, Spanish also. And then this is uniquely Georgian. So this is the ancient wine making methodology. Here we have Mukuzani. This is, again, the same grape. So this wine is a little bit more expensive than the Saperavi. This one costs about as much as the Kvevri made Saperavi. But this is Mukuzani, and it's taken from a specific region within Kakheti, and it is aged longer. So I believe that the typical Saperavi will sit in a barrel for 2 years, and this is aged for 3. So there should be a little bit more maturity to this wine. Here we have Kindzmarauli. So this is where we're going to take a real detour in terms of flavor. This is a semi-sweet. I think that Georgian wines in general run pretty sweet overall, but this is noticeably sweeter than the other Saperavi grape varieties and styles. They attain this sweetness by harvesting towards the end of the year, and the grape just ends up being sweeter because it's had more time to soak up that sunlight and mature. But who knows? I'm not a winemaker. I could just be talking out of my ass. So this will have a noticeably sweeter profile. And the color does seem to be a little bit brighter. We're going to let these breathe for just a little bit. There is no need to decant. When I was in Italy, an Italian winemaker told me something that I'll always remember. I asked him, like, hey, do I need to decant this wine? And he said, no, why you would decant? When you wake a baby, do you shake a baby? I said, oh, No, obviously. He said, no. Wine is the same. It's like a baby. It's going to wake up. No shake. So I've never decanted a wine since and never had a problem. I think you just pour it into the glass, let it breathe just a little bit, but there is no need to sort of decant an entire bottle. So now we're going to introduce the dark horse in this competition. So I mentioned what to look for in a bottle. So you want to find the region, the grape, the type, the winemaker, and finding a bottle that has sort of a very minimalist design is very desirable. It shows that while there is attention to marketing and that sort of thing, it's not the key focus. You want to avoid a wine bottle that has overly stylized, cartoony, almost graphics. It just sort of feels like it's meant to grab the eye rather than the palate. But I intentionally chose the cheapest authentic Kakhetian Saperavi that I could find in Ukraine. This is oddly made for a chain of grocery stores in Ukraine called ATB. I've had this painting in the background of several of my shots. It is sort of like the Dollar General of Ukraine. It is the cheapest option for groceries. It's sort of the lowest rung of the economic ladder, but it still has pretty decent stuff. I wouldn't buy, let's say, seafood from them, but in terms of day-to-day goods, it's an excellent place to go. But they commissioned this specific wine, and it's written here, for this chain of grocery stores, which is a bold move. It's quite an investment. But it is the cheapest legitimate Georgian-made Kakhetian Saperavi that I could find. So this will also take part in this scoring. And if it does well, I'll be really impressed. But we're going to just set this off to the side for now, and we'll come back to it later. There's also one more thing that I want to mention about the bottles. So if you're trying wine varieties and you're sort of new to the area, try and find the same year so that you're comparing the same year, because the years do change a lot depending on sunlight, rainfall, climate, that sort of thing that changes year to year. You would really want to make sure that you're within that same year, just so that the nuances that are from year to year changes would not be part of your comparison. Okay, so here we are in the first phase of wine trying. You're going to want to breathe it in. So the first interaction with wine is, of course, the eye. They all look very similar. They have this deep ruby. So just a really gorgeous color. You can shake it so that you can pretend to know what you're doing. Look at it like you have some deep, ponderous thought, when in reality, no one really knows what they're doing unless you're a sommelier. You're basically just looking at viscosity. You're looking at the amount of legs that it has. If the color sort of deepens along the edges. So if it remains sort of the same, or if you're looking down into it, how bright and how light does it look? These are all way above my head. I like scotch and beer. I drink wine for fun. Second interaction, other than the eyes, is the nose. So you want to sort of breathe in that bouquet. It helps if you breathe in through the nose and then out through the mouth. So you are getting a little bit of that sort of olfactory sense involved in terms of taste. This is a classic, beautiful Saperavi. It has the smell of tannins, dried fruit. A lot of people will say that this is really, really rich, super dry. I don't think so. I think that this is an excellent place to start if you like a dry wine. I like red wines that taste like you're drinking tobacco rolled in couch leather, covered in black pepper. I like those really punchy, dry, it almost makes your mouth pucker reds. And this is not that. But there is a depth and a richness here that's really, really nice. So you want to smell them all before you taste. You just want to keep that palate clear. But this is the Kvevri made one, so there should be sort of a pretty distinct difference. Whoa. The standard Saperavi in the EU style, it has woody, earthy notes to it, berries, and this, it has almost I would say like a funk to it. Almost like a, I don't want to say cheese, but something like that. Like the smell of sweat after a good workout, like slightly rotting hay. I know that I'm starting a band. So I know that this might sound derogatory, but it definitely has a different profile in terms of bouquet. So this is the Mukuzani. So this is aged for longer and chosen from specific regions within Kakheti. It smells super muted, very muted. Yeah, the standard Saperavi is very bright. This really has a pungent odor. But the Mukuzani is very dull. I was expecting a lot more because it is more expensive. And then this is the Kindzmarauli, so this is the semi-sweet. Wow, this is completely different. This doesn't even smell like a Georgian variety. This has a lot of spice notes. It smells like sherry, so anyone that likes sort of sherry bomb scotches will find something that they enjoy in this. But it smells very sharp. It smells like it should have been aged maybe a little bit longer, but it's definitely unique. This is very far away from Saperavi, and it's crazy that it's made from the same grape. So this to me smells like standard red wines, a hallmark of the Saperavi. This is crazy unique. I'm getting a lot of weird, almost non-wine smells from it. So I'm excited to try this. This smells a little bit dull. Shockingly, I thought that this would have a really punchy bouquet. And this one has a really strong spice profile. I smell like sherry. I smell sort of like clove inside of it. Slight black peppercorn maybe, but it doesn't really have the earthiness that a standard Saperavi has. So we have 4 different wines that all smell incredibly different, which is a bit surprising because they're all from the same grape in the same region and the same winemaker. So that just goes to show what talented winemakers can do. And then we're going to try on the nose this ATB purchased wine, licensed in Georgia, so this is still an authentic Georgian wine. This was about $3. So you have $3 for this, $6, $9, $8, $6. So I kept it kind of towards the lower to mid end because I personally think that once you go above like $40, it's really hard to differentiate unless you're trained. It smells like a red. It lacks a little bit of the character that this Saperavi has. Here I smell more earth and wood, dried fruits. This just smells like the red wine that a housewife drinks alone while her husband's away at work. I don't know. This is Drown Your Sorrows red, but it doesn't smell offensive. I was expecting it to smell way worse than this. But we are going to start with the Saperavi. And just to keep the comparison fair, I will also drink the cheap version to directly compare. Oh yeah. Oh baby. This is why it's impossible not to love Georgia. This is totally a redemption for drinking the cha-cha with Lyosha. This is punchy, it's got spice to it, it does have that dry feel. It is definitely drier than I recall. It's almost like sapping the moisture out of my mouth, and I love it. This is a beautiful red. You taste the tannins, you taste sort of the wood, the earthiness of it, dried fruits, really beautiful. This is incredible. And considering the fact that this was $6, it's really fantastic. Now we're going to compare to the ATB version. So this is the cheapest wine that you can possibly get that's still comparable. It's not bad. It lacks all complexity. It's a fine wine. If you were already deep into your wine drinking night, so if you've already gone through a couple bottles, this is not terrible. but it definitely lacks the complexity of this. I, to be honest, expected this to taste maybe like vinegar, because when you are in Georgia, a lot of people there think that they just sort of have this inherent genetic connection to winemaking, so they make wine. A lot of Georgians make homemade wine. Then you'll come over to their house, and they'll give you wine, and it's awful. It's really terrible, especially in Imereti, the central region of Georgia. You'll get wines that taste like vinegar all the time, and you just have to take it. This is acceptable. Compared to this one, it's totally flat. This is vivid. It's very cool. I love this. You feel that sort of uniqueness to it. This could be, you could tell me that this was from California or France, and I would believe you. But for $3 a bottle, can't really beat it. Can't really beat it. That's the Saperavi. This stuff is gorgeous. As always, there's a reason that it's sort of the king of grapes and the king of wines. You know, this should be the first wine that you try to introduce yourself to Georgian wine. But now we're going to get into this one. And this is the Kvevri one. This is crazy. There's a definite funk on top of everything else. So you smell very similar notes here, especially the dried fruit. You don't get the earthiness as much, I guess, because of the winemaking style. But this is very unique. Whoa, whoa. Yeah, the funkiness in the notes definitely carries over to the palate. That is very unique. You could set up 15 wines, all of them sort of the European style from different countries. You put one bottle of this in, and it would definitely stand out. The earthenware container that it sits in, the sort of beeswax that it's lined with, are all expressed in this wine in a very weird alien way. So, you know, this is the way that wine was made 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, and that character carries over. It's still really punchy, still high tannins, dried fruits, but it's got this funk to it. If you drink scotch, you know, like the Campbelltown scotches, like Springbank and stuff, they have that funk to it. And that's very present in this wine. Super cool, super cool. I don't think that I've ever sober had the two wines back to back. So I'm learning with you guys. Now we're to the Mukuzani. So this is more expensive, but it seems to have a weaker smell to it. Compare this to the ATB wine. Like, this is only slightly better than the extremely cheap version. So I kind of have low expectations. Okay. Okay. All right. It is exceptionally smooth. It lacks a lot of the punch in the Saperavi that I really love, but it's just totally rounded. It feels like it's more appropriately aged. It definitely has a maturity to it. I really like this. I thought that this would be super disappointing just based on the nose, but it's quite nice. Yeah, the Saperavi has a brightness and a youth to it. It's punchier, it's drier, but this feels like it's more well-rounded. This has great character. Yeah, that's really nice. It's got the same sort of flavor profile in this, but it's just more balanced. And it's got sort of the edges taken off. Tastes like a more mature wine. All right, now we're at the Kindzmarauli. That bouquet is crazy. It's definitely got sherry, spices that don't exist in the other wines. I personally don't like sweet wines, so I think that might be where I sort of don't enjoy this as much. Whoa, that is bold. Very sweet too. So they do call it semi-sweet. Georgian wines tend to run a bit sweeter than most other wine styles. But I wouldn't call this a sweet, especially if you're from the States, where a sweet red wine could be like a dessert wine. It just lacks a lot of the sharpness, the smell of it. And it's got a great nose on it. Spicy, punchy, unique, but it is very interesting. I don't know if I could sit and drink this for the whole night, because that sweetness would wear on me. But for now, this is super interesting. So while this kind of saps some of the moisture out of your mouth, this replenishes it. So I guess if you just drink in a circle, you'll be fine. This one, I would say, the Saperavi, the OG, this one would be for someone who is new to Georgian wine, but has some sort of wine knowledge. This is a great place to start. For those who have sort of extensive wine knowledge, think that they've seen and tried it all, I would say the Saperavi Kvevri. Very unique. That would be amazing for them. This wine feels like it's a bit more old school. So maybe for an older audience that appreciates sort of a more well-rounded, finer wine. So your grandpa, maybe, give them that. And this has a lot of body, a lot of aroma, and it has that sweetness. So this might be for someone who doesn't like reds, or someone who doesn't like wine in general. This is sweeter. It's more approachable, and it's fun for someone who maybe doesn't even like wine at all. So that's sort of my breakdown as to who I would recommend these wines for. A singular grape from a singular region was able to produce something so wildly different. I think that that is so cool. So what I would recommend is that you try a singular type. Maybe just get 4 bottles of Saperavi and get 4 or 5 friends. Every person can buy their own bottle. You come in and then you allow for a tasting so that you and your friends can explore this together. As you explore different areas and regions of Georgia, you're going to find even more of that unique character. This is the most popular because it's the most palatable. But you're going to find these niches in Georgia where they have very unique grapes, very unique styles, and you're going to find things that are a bit weird. So I'm going to follow this up with a white wine video, sort of using the same style, the same winery. And then if you guys want, I can make more complex videos because this rabbit hole goes super deep. There's a lot of information around this and a lot of nuance here. So thank you guys very much for your time. I hope that you learned something. I hope that this inspires you to try Georgian wines. It's really incredible. And as always, thanks guys. Till next time. I described this wine as a mature red, and it immediately made me think of Joan Holloway from Mad Men. So I almost described this wine as busty. So there you go, a busty red.